morning.
Good morning.
Okay, before we get started, I want to take a moment to remind everyone that if I'm asking you for a particular assignment on Edmodo, I need you to complete that assignment. Yesterday, you guys had a Quizlet, and almost everybody made 100s, and it was a quick, easy 100 for an exam, and one student that didn't turn it in. So that's a 0 on that exam. So I need you guys to read your instructions and submit accordingly, please. Okay, so now that that's out of the way, we're going to go ahead and finish up our lecture for Chapter 8. Guys, how did you like the lecture yesterday from Chapter 8? Did you get a chance to listen to it?
I did.
It's one of my favorite ones. I think it has pretty colors and cute little pictures, and I spent a lot of time on that one. So we're going to finish up that one. Again, I want to remind you that this is just a general overview of the CPT. One of the things that we talked a little bit about yesterday was modifiers. We have a whole chapter to cover modifiers. So we're just kind of taking little pieces out of the CPT and getting to know it a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. Uh-oh. Here we are. Okay, this is how I showed myself where I stopped yesterday. I put a stopwatch in there. Okay, so we're going to continue on with some modifiers. I'm going to try to come up with a page. It's page 203 in 2019.
Yeah, that's where we stopped last night on that video, right?
Yeah, yes, ma'am. And so it's page 209 in the 2020. Okay, CPT modifiers are 2 digits. I'm going to give an example. 62 modifier is 2 surgeons perform a surgical procedure. Each surgeon applies his or her individual skill, and each surgeon bills the procedure with the modifier 62. Now, I want you guys to understand, I know you're going, oh my goodness, how am I going to know that? We're going to get into a chapter that's specifically about modifiers, but then as we start coding, we're going to be talking about modifiers with each individual code that we're coding with. And you're not going to have a problem with knowing when to use a modifier. Level 2 HCPCS modifiers. AS is a physician's assistant, and FL is left-hand second digit. So some of our modifiers have letters in them. All modifiers are used on CPT or HCPCS. We don't use those in ICD-10. I don't know if y'all remember me saying this. If your CPT code is your road, like Highway 165, your modifier is going to be your street signs.
Right.
Well, all that a modifier does is it gives more detailed information to the third-party payer, which would be your insurance. Example of a modifier, 43820 is a gastrojejunostomy. I butchered that word, sorry. A 62 modifier is 2 surgeons. So if we amended that modifier with that CPT code, it'd be 2 surgeons performed a gastrojejunostomy. I love it. Anyway, that thing. 62 modifier may be allowed based on the payer. Example, Medicare requires documentation of medical necessity. Now, we hit on medical necessity a little bit, but what medical necessity is only tells the insurance company, why is this necessary? Why do we need to have this procedure? So I think I gave the heart cath example yesterday. Why do we need to have a heart catheterization? Well, that comes from our ICD-10 codes. In this example, code 43820 is the CPT procedure code for that procedure without phlebotomy. If 2 surgeons jointly perform this procedure, each performing a specific part of the procedure, you would code the 43820 with that 62 modifier. Each surgeon would bill the third-party payer using this modified code, ensuring proper payment for both. So if you didn't use the 62 modifier, the insurance company would not know that there were two surgeons, so only one surgeon would get paid. If you were that other surgeon, you would be mad, right?
Oh, yeah.
So that's why that's important. In cardiology, I never used the 62 modifier because generally only one surgeon did a surgery. I haven't seen this a lot, but that's just one of those things. It just depends on what specialty you go into. Okay, so we're going to talk about the modifiers on the CMS 1500 form. Now, this is bigger than the one that we looked at yesterday. But if you look in your books on that you have a copy of that form. You don't have to look at it now. You can just look at it big. But over here, it had like the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is your date of service. B is place of service. Never use the C. The D is your HCPCS or your CPT codes. And then these little squares are your modifiers. So if I did a 93458 in my CPT and I needed a 26 modifier, I'd put it on that first little block. And if I wanted to use a 59, I'd put it on the next little block. So I'm not going to explain what those are, but those are actually modifiers you use with that CPT code, but I'm not going to, it's too involved to get into that. But that's where you would actually list those. Okay, let me ask you something. Is the 1500 form a paper form or an electronic form?
Paper.
It is a paper form. That is important to remember because the 4010 is electronic and the 1500 is paper.
And it's always been red too.
It's red and white. That's right. It's always red and white. Okay, so let's talk about CPT codes that are unlisted codes. They end in 99. So, I'm looking from a CPT manual. Usually, they're listed at the very end of every chapter of your CPT book. So I am going to actually just pull out my CPT book and find one. You watch, I won't be able to find one now because I'm looking for it, right? Okay, so I'm looking at 39499, unlisted procedure, metastasinum. That's just, that's in the surgery section. But all of your 99 codes, your unlisted codes, are going to be listed at the very end. And also, a lot of times you will have a list of unlisted procedures in your guidelines in the front. So 99 codes are listed in the back, and they are unlisted services. And they're used if there is not a more specific code.
What page is that on?
Oh, and well, I have my 2020 CPT, and it's on page 298. Oh, and I don't see a 2019, Miss Lisa. Hang on, let me go see. That was 18. I'm talking, sorry guys. No,
It's okay.
I don't have the 19 with me right now. But just look towards the end of any of your sections of your CPT, and you're going to find 99 codes.
All right.
The last two digits are going to be 99. Okay, if you have to use an unlisted code, you always have to accompany it with a special report, which just means medical records of why you're using that 99 code. I have never used an unlisted code. Does not mean that you never will.
Right.
But unlisted codes always end with the 99. For example, 39499, unlisted procedure, metastasinum. Okay, so we're going to move on from this. Why are there unlisted services?
Because it's always changing.
Well, not just that, but they have to have some room for something that would be completely odd and off the wall, right? So we're going to use
Right.
unlisted codes, service codes, simply because there's not an exact code or one that matches up properly. Because there may not be a more specific code to use. That's basically what I said, but a little bit different wording. There's not a more specific code to use. Okay, I'm going to ask you, what do you have to send with that unlisted code?
The actual code.
Well, you have to send the actual code, but you have to attach documentation of why you've used that code, but only for these unlisted codes. Let me go back. See here, it says special report must accompany submission. Special report just simply means medical documentation or a letter to the third-party payer of why you're using this 99 code. It's not something you're going to run across hardly ever. It's a very, very uncommon.
So it's just a brief description of the 99.
Right. Well, you have to use the 99 when there are no more specific codes that match. That's all I can give you, simply because I've never used one.
I understand.
So I would have to assume that by now they're not used a great deal, simply because every year we're getting more and more specific, aren't we?
Yeah.
What code is used to indicate unlisted services? What's those last two numbers we just talked about?
99.
99. There you go, 99. What do category codes designate? These codes are widely used to describe services and procedures that have been approved by the FDA and or that have proved to have clinical effectiveness. What do we call HCPCS and CPT codes? They're category 1 codes.
Oh, okay. I thought
Yeah,
you literally.
you're wondering why in the world would they just not call it CPT codes? I don't know. But they're category 1 codes. We're teaching what the book is telling us.
I get it.
What do category 3 codes represent?
Oh. Hold on. I know that one. I wrote that down too. Because they don't get paid. Those are temporary codes that are describe emerging and experimental technology services and procedures.
Right. They may or may not have been approved by the FDA.
Okay.
Category 2 codes are supplemental tracking codes, and we've talked about this before. We're going to talk about it again. Category 2 codes provide supplemental information and are always used in combination with the Category 1 or a Category 3 code. They're used for performance measurements. Codes collect data concerning quality of care and tests required. Alphanumeric, and they end in the letter F. 1006F. And you can find a whole list of these on the AMA website. So category 3 codes are temporary codes, and they can be temporary for up to 5 years. They identify emerging technology, services, and procedures. They're located after the medicine section of our CPT. They're also alphanumeric, for example, 0042T, and may or may not receive future category code 1 status. Just because they're in there does not necessarily mean that they'll ever actually make it into the CPT book. Category 3 codes may eventually achieve category 1 status. However, there is no guarantee that this will be the case. I guess I decided I needed to say that in 2 different ways, huh? There you go. As noted previously, category 3 codes exist for procedures that lack a specific code within the CPT. These codes must be used instead of the unlisted service codes. When neither a category 1 nor a category 3 code exists, an unlisted code should be used. Okay, I know that sounds like a lot of wording, but I'm gonna tell you something. I've never run up on this. I've never had to use a category 2 or 3 code.
Okay.
So, and as we do our lessons, I don't believe that we even have that example, but it's great for information purposes. Okay, so remember when we were talking about that 99, that's unlisted procedure code? What is a special or written report? We talked about sending in a special report. It may be nature, extent, need, time, effort, equipment used, photos, and medical journal articles if relevant. I know for book purposes this is great, but I have to tell you, if you have to use an unlisted code and you have to send it to a third-party payer, what they're going to want is a note stating why, when it was done, what you used, and they're going to want you to attach medical records to it. A written report is required to explain the use of an unlisted code. Special reports must accompany claims when an unusual, new, seldom used, category 3 or unlisted procedure is performed. Whose responsibility is it to develop this report? And what is the purpose of the special written report? The physician who performed the procedure actually has to give you what report he deems necessary for you to send, and it helps the third-party payer determine if the procedure performed was appropriate and the medical necessity. What is the purpose of using the index in the back of the CPT manual? Oh, I'm gonna let y'all answer this one.
The purpose of using the index in the back of the CPT manual. Let's see.
You know, we use the index in the beginning of the ICD-10, right? That's where index was. So what do we actually use the index for?
Looking
To
stuff
look
up.
up. Yep, to look up the procedure in this
The
case.
location of the term or the code, right?
Right. And I wrote down here, it's codes that are used to describe tests, surgeries, evaluations, and any other medical procedures performed by a healthcare provider.
And that is what?
The index, that's where the codes are found. And then you confirm them by looking them up.
That's right. You go to the tabular, right?
Right.
The first step in coding is always pulling out what you need from your medical record, which this would be procedures. Then we would go to our index. And the next thing that we would do is we would go to our tabular so that we could code to the furthest specificity of what we're going to need. Okay, so, I think I said yesterday, I have to tell y'all guys, these sections and subcategories and categories, I get so confused on those. I always say section when it needs to be subsection. So let's just talk about our index. So your CPT index, we know indexes because we know how to use dictionaries, right?
Right.
So if we looked at our index in our CPT and it says repair iris, we know that iris is going to be the very first thing on that page.
Right.
On the other side, it's going to say toe, and we know that toe is going to be the last thing on that page, right?
Right.
Let me find a different one. I'm going to come back to my index. So if I just look at anything, it says mouth repair. The very first thing on that page is going to be repair, but then on the opposite side, it says muscle cutting. The last thing that's going to be on that page is cutting. Does that make sense?
No, but I think I'll get it later.
Okay, well, okay, so if I'm just looking at the first page of my index, the very first thing it says is A vitamin, and it says renal mass. The very first thing on my page is going to be, A vitamin. The very first thing that's going to be on my page is A vitamin. Then you look on the right-hand side on the same page, it says ablation renal mass. The last thing on my page is a renal mass. So this is a page of your index. Repair iris is what it says, so iris is here. This is the right-hand side of that page. It says repair toe. So the last thing on that page is toe. Do you have your CPT manual?
Yeah, I'm looking at it now.
Oh, the very first page. Mine is on page 898, but I have the 2020 in front of me.
Yep, mine's on 872. And A vitamin is what it says on the very first one.
Okay. On the very top line, it has a line across. It says A vitamin, right? And so under
Right.
the letter A, it says A vitamin. That's the very first thing on the page. Then if you look over to the right-hand side of that page, it says ablation, renal, mass. Okay, now you go all the way down, and the last thing on that page, it says renal mass, right?
No, not what, I'm not getting it here. Let's see.
You're still on the same page as you were with A vitamin, Miss Lisa. Hang on. I'm gonna
Okay.
stop the share, and I'm just gonna hold mine up so you can see.
Okay.
It says A vitamin, and that says A vitamin right there.
Right.
This says renal mass. Is that what that says? Yeah, renal mass. And the very last thing right here, it says renal mass. It's all on the same page. But it's just telling us what's on this page. The very first thing and the very last thing. I never used it.
No, mine doesn't say that.
Okay, but you have your CPT manual is a little different from mine.
Right.
Okay, is that your CPT manual?
Yep.
Why is it? I see purple.
Oh, no, hold on. I don't have the best lighting. On the end of my page, it says stereotactic.
All right, but the last thing that it says on your page is stereotactic too, right?
Oh, okay. I see the renal before it. Yeah.
Okay, yours may be a little bit different because we've updated a little bit, right?
Okay. I got you now. I see what you're saying now.
Okay, so we're going to go back to our screen share. All right, let's move on from that. Oh, I can't. That's the last one. We're done. Whoop, whoop. Yay, we're finished. Okay, so some of the tidbits they give us, the information, I think is over information and can get a little confusing. But, you know, I don't know how to put words to, okay, this is at the top of your index page and this is at the bottom. We automatically just look at it and we know what it is, right? No need for extra information. So, all right, well, you guys hang with me. I'm going to stop our recording.